everybody, welcome back to another 12 Rules for Life video. Today's video is going to be on rule number 8. If you want to check out the previous 7 rules, you can find them on the Jordan Peterson playlist within the channel. So without further ado, I give you rule 8. I hope you guys enjoy. Rule 8 is tell the truth or at least don't lie. He starts off by reminiscing about his early experiences as a clinical psychologist in the early 80s. Back then, he had just an inkling of a theory that untruths could lead to unforeseen consequences. As a student, he went with a group of classmates to take a tour of a psychiatric hospital. While there, the group was approached by a friendly schizophrenic patient who asked if they could join their group. Rather than tell any number of white lies to the patient to save face and spare their feelings, he instead chose to tell the patient the truth, that they could not join them because they were students on a tour and patients could not come. The patient was a little disappointed, but understood and was fine. Later in his life, he reflected that he really didn't know much about who he was as a person. So he started to pay close attention to the things he said and did in an attempt to get to know himself better. What he realized was that almost everything he said was untrue. He would use language to bend and twist the truth to achieve what he wanted, to win arguments, gain status, and impress people. Realizing he was fake, he began to tell the truth, or at the very least, he stopped lying outright. He was surprised to find how handy the truth can be and learned, when confronted by a situation you don't know how to handle, the best bet is to tell the truth. He uses an example from his clinical practice here. A patient who suffered from paranoia and violent fantasies would tell him about his horrible fantasies of murdering the people who wronged him. Rather than lie to him and say he understood his feelings to avoid upsetting the patient, he instead told him the truth, that his fantasies were disturbing and that he was frightened by them. Here, the truth led to 2 unexpected consequences. The paranoid patient began to trust him for telling the truth, and the truthful perspective helped him calm down and let go of some of the anger. We use our words to manipulate the world into delivering what we want. We can become possessed by an ill-formed desire, which we then act and speak in ways that we believe will bring this desire about. These desires could include imposing our ideological beliefs to prove we are right, to appear competent, to improve our position in life, to avoid responsibility, to be promoted, to get attention, to ensure we are liked by everybody, to convince people we are a victim, to justify cynicism, condemn society, avoid conflict, maintain indifference. This list can go on and on. The Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler called these lifelies. We use these lifelies to shape our perception, thoughts, and our actions to create a reality that justifies our desires. A life lived like this is unconsciously or consciously based on 2 premises. The first is the knowledge we currently have is sufficient to define what is good, unquestioningly far into the future. The second is that reality would be unbearable left to its own devices. The problem with the first premise is what you are currently aiming for might not be worth attaining, and what you are currently doing might be wrong. The second premise is only valid if life is inherently intolerable and simultaneously life is something that can be successfully manipulated and distorted. This view is dangerous and is reminiscent of the English poet John Milton's character of Satan in Paradise Lost, who says, "All I know is all that needs to be known." God's highest angel went spectacularly wrong when he used his own rationality to become prideful. Pride falls in love with its own creation and tries to make them absolute. This can be seen in the political landscape of today, as people and politicians of varying beliefs argue and strive to bring about their own ideal utopias. They condemn the world and its existing systems. Underneath all of this is the narcissistic belief that the world could be put right if only we were given the controls. Another problem of the lifelie is that of avoidance. It is easy to condemn the people who do wrong, but it's just as bad to sit back and let wrong happen when you could do something about it. To avoid conflict, we lie to ourselves and others and say we are not bothered by something when in fact we are. If you will not reveal yourself to others, you cannot reveal yourself to yourself. When we do this, not only do we suppress ourselves, but we also give up all the potential of who we could become. This isn't just a conceptual truth. It's a biological one as well. Researchers have recently discovered that new genes turn themselves on in the central nervous system when an organism places itself in a new situation. These genes code for new proteins, which are actually the building blocks for new structures in the brain. We have to say something, go somewhere, or do new things for this to happen. Otherwise, we remain incomplete, and life is too hard to go through incomplete. We have to stand up for ourselves and say no sometimes. If too many people don't stand up and say no in the face of wrong, this can cause terrible things to come about. By the time the Nazi concentration camps came about and it was time for someone to seriously say no, there was no one left capable of doing it. So we must abandon the lifelies and stop being willfully blind. If we don't, then we will end up doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. When we don't get our way, instead of blaming the world and its people, we must acknowledge that perhaps it's our goals or our methods that are wrong, and we still have something to learn. Many great thinkers such as Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Viktor Frankl, Sigmund Freud, Alfred Adler, and Carl Jung all came to the same conclusion. Lies warp the structure of being. Untruth corrupts the soul and the state alike, and one form of corruption feeds the other. Honesty may not bring about paradise on earth. However, it may manage to reduce suffering inherent in life to bearable levels. For it is deceit that makes people miserable beyond what they can bear. It fills us with resentment and vengefulness. It's deceit that produces the suffering of mankind. It caused hundreds of millions of people to die in the 20th century, and it's deceit that still threatens us most today. So what would it look like to tell the truth? Having aims and desires is not a bad thing, but we must pay close attention to how we go about achieving those desires. The ancient Egyptians understood this and can be seen in the story of the god Osiris. Osiris's brother Set was evil, but Osiris refused to acknowledge this evil and instead chose to be willfully blind. Set deceived his brother and hacked him to pieces and sent him to the underworld. In the story, Horus, Osiris's son, took on the form of a falcon, the most visually acute of all animals, and is still represented by the hieroglyph of the single eye. Horus was the god of attention. Horus battles with Set. In the battle, he loses an eye, but eventually overcomes him and gets his eye back. Horus then goes to the underworld and saves Osiris by giving him his lost eye. The lesson we can take from this is, the encounter with evil is terrifying enough to damage the vision of even a god, and that the attentive son can restore the vision of his father. Or, in other words, when bad things happen, it is easy to lose sight of the good in the world. Even the best among us are subject to resentment, and feeling defeated can lose our way. This is how whole cultures can go astray. The new generations must fearlessly face the truth of our collective past mistakes and strive to learn to do better. Set your ambitions toward developing character and ability rather than status and power. After all, you can lose status. You take your character with you wherever you go. As you strive towards this development, do not lie to others and to yourself. We must pay attention to what we say and do, and we must ask ourselves, what if my current ambition is an error? If we never question our ambitions, they can become our highest value. We regulate our emotions, our motivation, and our thoughts. For all intents and purposes, our ambitions can become our God. All people serve their ambitions. In that matter, there are no atheists. Rather, there are only people who know and don't know what God they serve. As you continue to live in truth, you will have to learn to accept and deal with the conflicts that arise as a result. As you do this, you will mature and become more responsible. You will grow wiser as you approach your goals. This newfound wisdom will help you formulate even better goals. To tell the truth is to bring the most habitable reality into being. Truth is the ultimate inexhaustible natural resource. It is the light in the darkness. Truth will not come disguised as collective opinions or ideologies, but rather, truth will be personal to you. So find your own personal truth and communicate it clearly. This will bring you some stability. If your life is not what it could be, try telling the truth. If you feel weak and rejected and desperate and confused, then try to tell the truth, or at least don't lie.